Alrighty, here we go. Welcome in. Week three's in the books. We're moving on to week four. We got quite a few injuries to cover today's fellas. But before we get into that, Russell Gage I don't want to say went off, but he did his job. And that was kind of one of our recommendations last week. So I kind of just wanted to give ourselves a pat on the back for that. Good work, fellas. Jeff Wilson, I mean, we just continue. If he's the running back there, you're playing him. And then we kind of all thought James Conner would play, and he did play. So kind of was a good week for us last week as far as all things go. But Richmond, how you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I know this is going to bite me later in the playoffs, but my fantasy teams, I won every matchup. So pretty happy there.
How many teams you got?
Tamale.
7 or 8 teams. So I think it was 7-0. Yeah, pretty happy. That means I'm going to lose first round of playoffs everywhere, but
Absolutely.
Happy while we're here.
Absolutely. Eric, how are you doing?
What's up, everybody? I am celebrating a win against a dear friend in one of our redraft leagues. I think I won by 0.5, thanks to CeeDee Lamb finally showing up. So kudos to CeeDee. Thanks for being a beast.
How much were you cursing after his drop touchdown in the first half?
Not at all. I trust CeeDee entirely. I knew that he would get his eventually.
That's right. He does. And Patrick, who is surprising us with a Twitter handle today. How are you doing?
All right. I had 2 heartbreaks, 2 losses by less than a point, but I did have 1 win by a point, so bittersweet. So
as far as the week goes, it just kind of
9 and 7 on the week. So
okay,
tough one.
Hey, but it's above 50%.
Yeah, Tony Pollard.
Always stay in the green.
2 more points. I would have been much happier, but still there.
That's the way the cookie crumbles, as they say. Well, moving on, let's kind of start probably with the biggest news of the week as far as the NFL landscape goes. Mac Jones with a high ankle sprain. He was not wanting to put any weight on it after the game. Now, I'm going to let Richmond take over here in a minute as far as kind of what the plan maybe going forward is for Mac Jones and at least the options for him. But briefly, I just want to kind of explain to people the difference between a high ankle sprain and a low ankle sprain and why a high ankle sprain typically takes longer to recover from. So a high ankle sprain, when you bring your foot up into what is called dorsiflexion, so the opposite of pressing down on the gas in layman's terms, that causes the ligaments that are affected with a high ankle sprain to spread because that is the ligaments that attach our lower leg bones together. A low ankle sprain attaches the lower leg bones basically to the ankle joint. So typically a high ankle sprain, whenever you're running and your foot goes into that motion, it causes them to expand and it hurts those ligaments all over again. Richmond, correct me if I'm wrong on that. That's a very brief and kind of general understanding of it. But correct me if I'm wrong and tell us the plan going forward for Mac Jones.
Now, I think that's a great explanation. Kind of leads right into where I was going to go. So a few different options for this. Traditionally, if we're going to say we're not going to have surgery, this could be 6 to 8 weeks of doing rehab and waiting for him to heal and get ready and get back to being comfortable with being able to plant his foot. If you're not going to do that, the other options is surgery. Surgery is going to take us, it depends on the route they go. So tightrope surgery, which was made famous by Tua down in Alabama, that's where they take 2 essentially cords and those 2 bones Matt was talking about, they take them and kind of like put a tight rope between them to kind of hold them together. So where he said they spread apart, now we're holding them together. That's one option. The other option is the old-fashioned option where they take screws and plates and kind of use those to hold them together. Mac Jones is probably opt for the tightrope. So that's going to be more of like a 4-week recovery timeline. We've seen guys, like you said, like Tua's done it. Alabama's rehab guys really made this famous. It was kind of their secret that they kept for a long time before everybody started coming to Alabama to learn how to do this, how they could get the Tua surgery is what a lot of people called it. I've seen a few people at work with it, and all the kids are all excited because their doctors tell them they're getting the Tua surgery to fix their ankle. So if we're looking at it, that'd be the most ideal for us fantasy folks, is that he goes ahead and gets that tightrope, can get back for 4 weeks, but it's sounding like they might wait it out and see how it goes. I know Bill Belichick said yesterday or today that it's improved a lot in the last 48 hours. So it's kind of up in the air to kind of see which path they choose to take. 4-week path, or maybe looking at more like 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, for me personally, I think it's going to be really telling if he ends up on IR or not, on just how long it's going to take. I think if there's any hope that it's 4 weeks or less, he probably doesn't end up on IR. And any more than that, he probably does, because why wouldn't you put him on IR if he's going to be out for 6 weeks anyway? Now, the next man up there is Brian Hoyer. Patrick, how are we feeling about Hoyer? We rolling him out anywhere?
Ooh, no. Hard pass. Hard pass. I was looking through. I'm pretty sure his last full game was back in 2019. If anybody knows better, correct me. But that was just one game, I believe, that season. So kind of been a career backup player as past few years. I mean, he's been there. Has it been 2 or 3 seasons now? He's been with them.
Let's say 2.
I think at
I
least
don't know
2.
if that's right, true or not.
I mean, I'm not going to roll him out, but I mean, it's Bill Belichick. He finds success still. So, I mean, if you got the Patriots players, I might still run the running backs out in a flex position. Might wait and see on the receivers if you're having them. I mean, if you're desperate, you can roll them out. I mean, it's a dart throw. But yeah, I mean, for the next potential 4 to 6 weeks that Jones is out, I mean, they got not a tough schedule. They got Green Bay next, and then Detroit, Cleveland, Chicago, Jets, Indy, and then their bye. So they may take that conservative approach with Mac and just see how Hoyer holds up. May not try to rush him back. I mean, young guy, but short term, yeah.
Sure. I'm with you that you mentioned that this may just be a bump to the running backs there. I mean, the offense has kind of been anemic anyway. There's not been a lot of love from the receiver position. I mean, Devontae Parker had a good game last week, but I don't really necessarily trust him. Well, speaking of the man himself that the surgery was named after, Tua Tagovailoa. Did I say that right? I never say it right. So
Sure.
Anyway, they're calling it a back injury. Sure looked like he took a shot to the head and then started stumbling. But as we all know, the NFL is super trustworthy when it comes to head injuries. So they would never lie about anything like that. But anyway, let's take it at face value. Eric, how are we feeling? Because Tua plays on Thursday, plays tomorrow, and he's kind of been limited all week. So how are you feeling about Tua?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that type of hit makes it really suspect for, a really serious type of concussion. I think whenever you see, a quarterback taking that initial hit, he's at risk of a traditional concussion. And then you see his head snap back like that and hit the turf. He's at risk of what's called a counter-coup concussion, which is essentially 2 concussions in one. And something like that would easily disrupt, your postural stability and give what Tua described as back spasms. So, my lizard brain, my conspiracy brain believes that he did get this type of more serious counter-coup concussion, and that's what caused the back spasms. But Matt, I think you're right. Like, you have to trust the independent neurologist that's on the field. Someone sent him out there. And I do think that the NFL has been trying to get better at their concussion protocols and their adherence to it. So, in good faith, we're believing that he did not suffer, probably the more serious of the 2 injuries, and he really did suffer a back spasm. And in that case, you would like to think that even by Thursday, he could play. But this is the type of thing that, like Jameis Winston with his back injury, the deep ball might be affected. his ability to really drive on that back leg, torque
What
his
deep
trunk.
ball?
Well, he's actually had
Did
some
you see those
reasonable.
bombs?
He's had some reasonable deep bombs to
Yeah.
Tyreek
Waddle.
and to
That
Waddle.
Tyreek catches like a
Did
punt
he-
return.
Yeah, did he
No,
throw
if
like
you-
a 40-yard bomb to Waddle for a touchdown
I
last
think
weekend?
he's been all right this year.
I'm
actually.
kidding.
The
I love
stats are
Tua,
there.
guys. I love
Yeah.
Tua. I just had to get that in there.
According to Twitter, if you flip the backwards video and you turn it upside down, it actually looks a lot better. So
I saw the video. It actually did. But whatever.
Yeah, you have to watch the game upside down on your couch. Then he's an amazing
Looks real
athlete.
good. Yeah.
No, I mean, but in all seriousness, I think that he'll play. Assuming that it's in good faith, the back spasm injury. I would just be more concerned about the big playability. But I think that if you have Tua, you're rolling him out.
Yeah, I agree. The next man up would be Teddy Bridgewater, and I think Teddy B is a fair backup. I'm probably not playing Teddy B, but he's good enough that I'm not worried about the other pieces. I'm not worried about Tyreek Hill. Not worried about, maybe worried about Jalen Waddle because he's dealing with a groin injury. Supposedly, not a whole lot of information's been given about it. Patrick, how are we feeling about Jalen Waddle for Thursday night?
Oof. I mean, short week. That's the concerning part, especially with a muscular injury like this. It's the groin too. I mean, what makes him good is getting off that line, and it's quick movement, that quick lateral shift to lose that corner and get off that line. That groin on a short week, if it's not rested properly, it makes me a little hesitant. Now, if I have him, I'm still rolling him out. If they say he's good to go, I'm rolling him out, but I'm a little hesitant. Depending on my roster, if I got someone else that might have a little bit more upside, I might sit him this week just because of that. Now, I say that, and then he's going to go off for like 3 touchdowns and like 200 yards.
Of course.
But
Who has more upside than Waddle? I mean, I feel like in terms of upside, he's got to be one of the top 10 athletes on the field.
I don't know. Maybe Tyreek Hill.
on the field, unless he pulls his groin within 2 minutes of the game. That's all I'm saying.
And the re-injury rates are high when it comes to soft
It's
tissue.
high.
That's true.
Yeah, and that's the only thing. Again, it's your own roster construction. If he's your wide receiver 1, you're rolling him out there. But if you got a nice roster and he's your wide receiver 2 or 3, and you were playing him in your flex, it might take a week and bench him and throw someone else out there.
Yeah,
Good news is
oh,
we'll get the update Thursday, whether he's playing or not. You're not having to wait till like Sunday night or Monday even. Yeah. That's all I'm saying there. Richmond, what were you going to say?
I said I did see a report earlier that if the NFL still used their probable listing, that there's a chance that Waddle would have been more of a probable than he was questionable. So,
yeah, I think they took that away because of Bill Belichick. That's the reason they take everything away. Anyway, my personal opinion, I think if Waddle can't go, I think Mike Gesicki gets more love. Does anyone else have another name that they would think takes over that?
I think it's just the Tyreek show. I mean, Gesicki has not been good at getting open. I don't think that he's been at all, the preferred target. Even
he hasn't. But that's what I mean is if Waddle's not there.
I guess I just mean to say his underlying metrics recently have been really rough in terms of ability to get open and then catch the ball when targeted.
That's fair. I don't know. I'm not trying to roll out Mike Gesicki. I'm just throwing him out there as an option if Waddle's not there.
Yeah. Otherwise, Cedric Wilson.
Yeah, I could see running backs getting again a little more target share, especially if Tua is limited. They might try to get the ball out of his hands quicker. Just kind of like we said last week. What was was it Jameis Winston? I think we were talking about maybe trying to do some more screen passes. When quarterbacks are injured, was it Cooper? But yeah, I mean it's all scheme. I would if I have Edmonds or Mostert, I'm probably rolling those guys out.
That's fair. Well, speaking of running backs, let's move on to them. Kind of a big one that just popped up on the injury reports today is Jonathan Taylor with a toe injury. He's saying, and they're saying that he's going to be ready to roll. But Patrick, is there any concern about Jonathan Taylor with this toe, even though there's not a whole lot of information to go off of.
Yeah, I tried to dig a little bit and find a little more info on what it was, but couldn't find much. I'm going to go, no, probably not. It's Wednesday. I mean, third week. Players like him are going to pick up little nagging things even during practice. Probably just stepped wrong, felt a little funny. You're like, all right, pull him out. So I'm not hesitant. If I have him, I'm playing him. Like, he's been consistent game snaps every week. So
I think at the worst, this is a warning sign of, the type of stress that causes turf toe, if it is, the big toe. But even then, it's just a warning sign, and it sounds like they're doing the right thing by giving him rest. So I'm with that. I think it's all good.
Now, if you have Taylor, though, and depending on your team, you might want to pick up Hines if he's still available, just in case he does enter it during the game this week. Be 1 week ahead of that. So,
yeah, that is important to be able to. This brings up another point. I'm going off on a tangent here. I feel like unless you just have short benches, every backup running back should be rostered, and you should be committing to that if you have them on their team. I'm in a league. I swear I got almost my entire bench as backup running backs. I don't necessarily recommend that. I'm kind of crazy, but that's just my 2 cents on the matter. But moving on, Eric, what can you tell us about David Montgomery? It was kind of weird. He got ruled out very quickly after his injury, and then kind of after the game, they just were like, oh, yeah, now he's day-to-day. So it was kind of like almost like worst-case scenario, and then we don't really know what's going on now. So can you fill us in a little bit on what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, I think more recently I saw that they clarified it as an ankle injury, not a knee injury. And, so then when you look at the video, you see that he was rolled up on, and it's pretty high likelihood that it's another high ankle sprain. I think, this initial report of having him day-to-day indicates a low-grade ankle sprain, sort of the opposite end of the spectrum of Mac Jones. And that means he'll probably miss this week. I mean, it was enough to hold him out the rest of the game. And, I think, even when he does come back, his production is at risk of being limited. We've seen high ankle sprains limit tons of amazing athletes in the NFL in their first 2 weeks of coming back. But really, I think like my biggest concern for David Montgomery is losing snap counts to Khalil, who was amazing in his replacement of David Montgomery last week. And frankly, he's been good as a backup his entire career. He's a bit Alexander Madison-like without the ceiling of Dalvin Cook in front of him. So, I think this is an offense that's desperate for a spark. And with David Montgomery's absence, they might just share more snaps to Khalil, even when Montgomery is back.
No, I agree. Khalil Herbert is amazing out there. He was the RB1 on the week, not starting a game. Like, that's kind of crazy. I think he had 150 yards and a touchdown or two.
Yep.
So
2 touchdowns.
If Montgomery's not going, you're rolling out Khalil Herbert, no problem, no issues there. I'm kind of curious what his price on DraftKings is right now. I didn't look before the game. After last week, though, and with the injury, I could see them kind of jumping up his price. So he might not be just the freebie cheap play of the week, but that'd be interesting to know.
Yeah.
Then we got Dalvin Cook with his recurring shoulder dislocation issue. Richmond, I know it's been happening. It happened last year. It's happened in years prior. What are we concerned about this? I mean, obviously there is some concern anytime a body part's popping out of where it's supposed to be, but what is our level of concern here?
I would say having had it happen already once before, and then without having a true repair done, it's pretty concerning that it could happen again and be recurring. He has a torn labrum. It has been repaired. So I think this time he said he's going to play with a shoulder protector in there to kind of hold himself together. Sorry, cat in the way. But definitely another time to I mean, I'm sure Alexander Madison is rostered in pretty much every league, as this is a yearly occurrence that you can roll out Alexander Madison for a good 2 to 3 starts a year.
Yeah, I doubt Madison's available, and if Cook's not going, you're easily rolling Madison out there, no problem. And then, yeah, moving on. There's another backup here. Jamal Williams had a heck of a game. I'm bringing him up because Deandre Swift's dealing with this shoulder injury that we don't really know much about either. They're not giving us a whole bunch of information to go on rather than saying, hey.
I saw something comparing it to Dalvin Cook. Like somebody reporting that's similar to Dalvin Cook's injury from last year. Like there might have been a sublux, maybe a torn labrum. I didn't see no confirmed like imaging or anything on it, but it was just one of the, hey, someone reported from some source. That's what they're hearing.
Interesting.
Yeah,
so you brought it up. I want to clarify something real quick. A subluxation is very similar to a dislocation. It's just when it pops out and then pops right back in on its own. Yeah. So I just wanted to hit that real quick.
Yeah. Now, I mean, I want to talk on Swift and Williams a little bit. Like, there's 2 more games for them before the bye. So depending on how severe this is, and Williams showed up last week, they may hold Swift out for 2 weeks and just give him full 3 weeks. Like, hey, he's a key piece to their offense, and they look pretty good even without him, but save them is kind of what I think they might end up doing. And then obviously Williams takes that RB1 role. But Reynolds, their third running back, he got some snaps when Swift went out. So I wouldn't be surprised if they kind of kept running back timeshare. Williams probably still takes majority of the carries, but Reynolds might get a little bit of run there and might see how he does.
Yeah, that'd be interesting because they do like to use both running backs.
Yeah. And I don't think Williams has ever been a full 3-down back in his career, has he?
No, he was a vulture to Aaron Jones with the Packers, and then he moved over to be a vulture with the Lions. So he's pretty supplanted as a vulture.
Yeah, so I'm very curious how, if he gets a 100% workload, how he will hold up. But something to watch and see.
Yeah, but I mean, you're rolling him out, no issues though.
Oh, for sure.
So, another one I'm just going to briefly mention. Christian McCaffrey ended up on the injury report today, but he's been on the injury report every Wednesday since the season began. They've been giving him that day off. So, I mean, obviously this is something to keep an eye on as the week goes. They listed it as a quad injury. But I don't think there's necessarily anything more to be said about it right now. It just kind of seems like a day of rest for him again. It'll be really telling as if he practices Thursday or not.
Yeah.
But now more interesting, at least for me, is these wide receivers for the Saints. One, because as we were talking about last week, Jameis with his back issue, kind of seems like he's reverted back to famous Jameis throwing all the interceptions. Michael Thomas now pops up with a toe or a foot injury. I don't really know. They're not telling a whole lot about it other than it's the opposite leg that's been giving him trouble all these years. Jarvis Landry has an ankle injury. They were both non-participants today. Eric, are we worried about Jarvis and Michael Thomas going forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately I'm more concerned that the Saints are trying to be like Tampa Bay. I mean, Tampa Bay was the most recent Super Bowl winner, and every one of their skill position players are out this year. So, it seems like the Saints are trying to fit the mold.
Tampa Bay beat them, so they're just trying to follow. That worked.
There's something in the Gulf water. No, I mean, I think it's like we were talking about with McCaffrey that this is a traditional veteran rest day. So you have Michael Thomas, you have Jarvis Landry, 2 of the older but also well-known productive receivers in the league. makes sense that they would have today off. But I do think that these are the types of injuries that, can easily be nagging and can easily hold, an older player out for at least 1 week. So these are the types of things where we know very little about it. But we know that there's at least modest risk of keeping these players out for a week. I think you're going to have to follow the practice reports. And I think, ultimately, if they're in, their production might be limited.
Yeah. Make sure you wake up early, 9:30 a.m. on Sunday.
Well, that's
Oh,
right.
good call.
London.
They're also. I was going to make a point. They're also traveling to London now. As far as recovery goes, it may not be that big of a deal, but you're losing. That's a day of travel, time change. You're probably losing a day of rehab for whatever they may be dealing with. Could that play a small factor?
British physios. I don't know what they're like.
I mean, they're pretty good with the feet. I'm just throwing it out there. Feet, legs, they're pretty accustomed with it. They deal with those footballers all the time.
I don't know this reference. Oh, okay.
Come on, you're
My brain definitely went somewhere
Yeah,
else.
I'll with that,
Pat's our resident. Pat's our resident book guy now.
Now, saying this, we do
I don't know
know
what kind of PT sites you've been looking at. Moving on.
we do know the next man up. I don't even know if you would call him the next man up because he's kind of just taking the reins and going
He's
with
already
it.
that man.
Yeah,
he's there.
It's Chris Olave, who had a heck of a game. Looks to be that dude out there, as the kids are saying nowadays. He's wide receiver 16 on keep trade cut right now. He's got Debo and Devontae Adams right before him, and Devontae Smith and DK Metcalf right after him. Patrick, is that too high, too low, maybe just right for Olave? I mean, kind of seems expensive to me, but I'm interested in your thoughts on it.
It's up there. I mean, I know we were talking, kind of looking at the dynasty aspect of it. I probably would take him over Devontae Adams right now, to be honest. Debo, I'm a big Debo fan personally. I like Debo. That's high praise to be close to him. But
I'm actually surprised Debo's that low.
Low,
like,
yeah.
He's wide receiver like 14 on there. Like that.
I'm actually surprised he didn't get a bump when Jimmy took over too, because he did well last year with Jimmy at quarterback. I don't know, but I mean it's up there. He showed out every week. He's just gotten a little better, a little more comfortable. It looks like. So I mean, we'll see how it keeps going. Olave got better. So it's high praise. Might be a little too soon for it.
I think it's way too high. I mean, all of these guys that he's next to, I would consider are his best case scenario ceiling. And these are guys that have proven it year after year. Sure, Devonta Adams is 29, but the good players, they last, into their early 30s. I think even week 1 of this year is exhibition that Devonta is still Devonta, and Olave is, a guy who's gotten lots of targets early in his career, the first three games. So that's not saying nothing, but in terms of a 1-for-1, no way, man. I mean, I think that's just way too soon to be crowning this guy. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm with y'all. I think it really, we say this a lot. It really depends on your team makeup of what you got going on in your dynasty league. If you're not necessarily competing this year and Devontae Adams is sitting there, you have him on your team and you can do that 1-for-1 flop, I might do that. I know you're saying they play into their 30s, but Devontae Adams is never going to gain value from this point forward. He will only lose value unless you're competing in a dynasty league. Whereas Olave, I'm with y'all. I think this is kind of too expensive for him right now, but there's that chance he ends up as a top 10 receiver dynasty-wise and going forward. So I could see that flop both ways. I like to think I'm competing in most of my leagues. I'm going to take Devontae, but there's a couple of them where I would sell Devontae for Chris Olave right now.
I have a fun factoid about Olave's production. I think it's that not a single one of his targets and production came off of man coverage, all of which were zone, which would indicate that the majority of the more intense press coverage and attention from the defense is on, the real star power on the offense, Michael Thomas, Jarvis Landry, perhaps. And that would give Olave, who's a skilled player, no disrespect, but give him the ability to weave into the zone and get this mass production that we've gotten early. So it could be inflated, is my point.
True.
It very well could. It very well could. But yeah, no, I'm with y'all. Although it's looking like every first round wide receiver this year was a great player to add to your dynasty league, which isn't always the case. So yeah, I'd be happy if any of them are on your roster. Now to kind of the weird injury of the week, I'm going to call it. It's Sterling Shepard tearing his ACL, looking like he's just running in a straight line, maybe even jogging in a straight line. Richmond, what's happened to him? I think you kind of have like a theory on what you think happened.
Yeah, so he clearly injured it while he was decelerating after a route. Deceleration is definitely a mechanism of ACL injury. However, my theory is that it was probably an injury or a partial tear that he sustained earlier. And that was just kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. He put his foot down and then finished it off. For being some guy who does that kind of a deceleration probably 100 times a day, 100 times a game, I just can't imagine that would be what performed the full thickness ACL tear. So my theory is that he probably had something going on previously, and then he just put his foot down the right way to finish it off. Or maybe it was already torn and he just put his foot down the right way and really kind of realized what was happening. There's lots of cases of NFL players finishing games on a torn ACL without even realizing that they've had a torn ACL the whole game. Then going back and looking back and be like, oh, this play is probably where I tore it, but I was able to finish it out. So I don't think that's how he did it, but I definitely think that's when it came to fruition.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. I think people generally think that an ACL tear, like they're down, they're holding their knee, it hurts a lot. But I've definitely seen it in my world that I've had a women's soccer player one time tore her ACL. And I mean, she came over to the sideline and said, my knee feels kind of weird, but she was able to do everything, able to jump, cut, run, do everything she needed to do, kick the ball. So I was like, okay, I mean, let's go if we can go. And then next day her, knee was the size of 4 knees, and turned out she had torn her ACL. And it was like, wow, well, good job playing the rest of the game.
Classic case of 4 knees.
It's, it happens. 4 knees. There's a town in Texas called Forney. Anyway.
Fun fact.
Fun fact. Dang, I should have saved that for trivia. Anyway. Now, the next man up for the Giants is kind of a question. I'm not even going to pretend to have Kenny Golladay in that conversation. I'm pretty sure everyone and their mama is out on Kenny Golladay. So really, we kind of have 3 options going forward. We have Richie James, Kadarius Toney coming off his own, I believe, hamstring injury, and Wan'Dale Robinson coming off kind of a knee injury. Patrick, which of these 3 do you prefer going forward?
I mean, if you're making me choose at this
I'm
point,
making you choose.
probably James. I mean, he's been there, I believe, every week, 5 in targets each game. Not a lot, but he's making the catches. He's on the field. At this point, he's consistent. He's on the field. So now I have someone else I'm actually keeping an eye on, the tight end, the rookie, Bellinger. I don't know if you guys watched the whole game, but Jones seemed to start finding him, and they seem to develop a little connection there. I'm curious if that maybe takes a step forward. I mean, it seemed like he ran decent routes. He can still run block, so they can keep him in on run plays, helps out on play action plays. So I'm curious to see how he develops in that offense now that there might be a little more opportunity there. But receiver-wise, I'd go James, and then other than that, it's rolling dice. You never know. I don't know what you're going to get.
Cool. Eric, any thoughts on that?
Yeah. I mean, I would probably pick Tony because I think we've seen Richie James's ceiling. And I think anytime, Tony is healthy, he's immediately, a playmaker, 13 target guy, I think, if he's gonna play, Tony, if Tony's gonna play, then you could easily put him in your lineup and be satisfied with that. But I think, even if Richie James is healthy, you put him in your satisfied, or you put him in your lineup and you're not happy. It's kind of a bummer that he's in your lineup. So I think even with Tony's injury history, I would be happy to roster him, and if he's healthy, I'd be happier to play him than I would Richie James. But I'm with you, Pat. Like, is he ever going to be healthy?
Tony had 13 targets?
I think he is capable of a 13 target game.
I mean,
between his
Dallas
two
last year.
seasons, he's only had 2 games over 10 targets.
Oh, that's probably more than Richie James.
Okay, touche.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying his ceiling is well beyond Richie James. I'm saying we're seeing Richie James' ceiling.
I can agree with that, but I mean, again, it's who's going to be out there on the field. If you're trying to pick up a guy that's probably going to be on the field consistently at this point, he's the safe bet.
I hear you. I have one for you guys. So Kadarius Toney on Keep Trade Cut is wide receiver 58.
Whoa. Who's around him?
Suspense is going
I'm back.
I gotta go to the next page.
He's wide receiver 58. He's one below Josh Palmer and one above his teammate Wan'Dale Robinson. So how do you guys value Kadarius Toney? I mean, given his draft capital, his playmaking ability, but also his injury history.
I mean, that just gets into a weird range on keep trade cut. I mean, pretty much when you get past like wide receiver 40 or so, where it's just like kind of like almost shoot your shot. You might have someone on like a dynasty roster that they're like, no, I believe in Tony. He's a wide receiver 24 or more going forward. I'm not selling him for anything short more than a first. Or then you have it where, I don't believe in him. I'll sell him for I'll sell him for a Wan'Dale Robinson, which I would, but that's just me because I believe in Wan'Dale. I don't believe in Tony, but I mean, there's people that are the opposite. I don't have any Tony on my teams because of that. Like,
personal opinions at that point.
right.
Yeah.
That's what it boils down to. Is like, who do you just like better?
Yeah. Personally, I mean, Florida fan speaking here, but somebody who watched him play all his games in Florida and work his way up. Never really had an injury problem aside from a shoulder in college, but I mean, started the NFL off with that hamstring injury last year, and it's just kind of followed him around, it seems. Whatever offseason surgery he might have had this year. For a guy who's as dynamic as he is, the really making his money with his stop and go cuts, hamstring's a big deal for him. So if he's not feeling 100% with his hamstring, he's not going to be able to be the kind of player that achieves his ceiling. So I think preferably I'd rather have him sit out and see if he can get his hamstring right, because if he can't get his hamstring right, I'd say he's not worth anything. Kadarius Toney with fully healed hamstring, I think, is easily a top 20 guy.
Hot take.
Top 20, did not expect that.
I told you. There's always someone that believes in him. Anyway,
Sell this guy Kadarius Toney.
let's move on from the Giants receivers because this might be all an argument over nothing because the Giants don't necessarily look good on offense this year. But moving on, briefly I just want to mention this. Jalen Guyton for the Chargers tore his ACL. I don't think this really affects fantasy too much, but I did kind of want to just mention it and wish the guy a full recovery, and hopefully he can get back on because he's kind of that borderline making the roster guy anyway. So I'm hoping this doesn't derail his career. I don't think it will, but prayers for him. Couple IDP injuries that I'm going to briefly mention. Joey Bosa is actually getting surgery on his groin. Timetable's not really out there yet. It almost sounds like it's a hernia to me anytime they're saying you're getting surgery on your groin, but that's not necessarily confirmed right now. And then also Myles Garrett was in a car wreck. Seems like he's just dealing with soreness right now, but that is something to keep an eye on for our IDP people going forward. Now, hey, Eric, you mentioned the Bucs receivers earlier. Is there any interesting tidbits about them going forward, or are they all still just injured?
Yeah, I think it's pretty much more bad news bears, more of the same. I mean, we'll get Mike Evans back, right? I think the main update is that Leonard Fournette has, verbally acknowledged that it's probably going to be more of a split backfield going forward. I think his verbiage was like he wants to prolong his career, which means more Keyshawn Vaughn, more Rashad White. So, easily there could be more targets to those backs. But it's probably going to remain, in terms of fantasy relevance and ceiling, just the Mike Evans show.
Probably so. Hey, Russell Gage is a receiver there too, though. Come on, put some respect on his name. He was handpicked by Tom Brady to come to that team.
So good, he could turn 13 targets into 87 yards.
More than I could do. That is more than I could do. Kind of the only other real update I have is Keenan Allen's getting healthier with his hamstring. He was a limited participant today. Hopefully he can be a full participant by Friday, and hopefully he can roll out this weekend and return to form, because it's a lot better for fantasy purposes when Keenan Allen's out there and you're not rolling out Josh Palmer. Now, moving on, we're nearing the end of our show, guys. But last week, our flag plant of the week was Russell Gage, which worked out very, very well. Richmond, Patrick, and Eric, my question for y'all is, do we have a flag plant of the week this week?
I do. Khalil Herbert. Herbert's my flag plant. I think whether Montgomery plays or not, I think Khalil Herbert is a great fit for that offense, and I really think that he's going to be a guy to watch as we move on. Virginia Tech product, so got to watch him some in college, and then now in the NFL. He had good moments last year. I think he'll have good moments coming more this season. Secondary, not quite a flag plant, but just a guy to keep an eye on. Zach Wilson is back up with the Jets this week. So I think Elijah Moore is going to be a guy to keep an eye on. They had great chemistry last year. So he may not be the next man up, but with Zach Wilson returning from injury, I definitely think keep an eye on Elijah Moore.
Elijah Moore needs it because right now he has been hurting my teams. Not as much as Darnell Mooney, but
oh God, Mooney.
Patrick, Eric, do y'all have a flag plant?
I had Herbert too.
Okay, double for Herbert.
Double for Herbert. If I'm gonna go secondary, I did put Bellinger, Giants tight end.
I like that.
I don't know. It's just long shot, but I don't know. I feel like there's
I
got
bet
to be
he's
a guy
cheap on
there.
DFS.
Oh God,
So
I haven't even looked. But yeah, I'm curious how that works out.
Yeah, I mean, I argued about not crowning Olave quite yet, along with some of the kings that he was next to on keep trade cut. But I think that if either Michael Thomas or Jarvis Landry are out, it's clearly going to be the Olave show. His air yards are out of control. I think he leads the league, so I think he could easily be a boom guy on your roster, and he's probably going to fit in as your flex. And he could win you some weeks, but. One of the lesser names that I think you should be keeping an eye on for your waivers is Rashad White. I talked about him, I think, 2 weeks ago, and I think his time is coming. So, he's one of the guys that my actionable advice would be if he's on your waivers or if he's cheap enough guy to get, go trade for and get on your roster, then I would be trying to do that now because I think his time is coming. And it's probably going to be, more mid-season, but when it's coming, it'll be here.
yeah, sure. For me, this was not mine. I didn't have one before the show, but then our Mac Jones talk sort of convinced me for this. I think Ramondre Stevenson is my flag plan of the week. I just think the Patriots are going to need to utilize him more. He looks better than Damian Harris to me. He's a better pass catcher for sure. So I think they're going to be heavily reliant on probably both their running backs going forward, but Ramondre is definitely the one I want to be playing. But anyway, guys, that means now it is time for trivia. Are we ready?
Never.
Same thing as last. I think I made this one easier.
Okay.
I think I did. Trust me, my first question I was going to ask, which I'll tell you all in a little bit, was not easier after I looked up the answer. But this one I think is easier. We've mentioned a few Alabama QBs on this show so far today. Well, I guess a receiver too, Waddle. But anyway, so Mac Jones, Jalen Hurts, and Tua have all played at the historic Alabama Crimson Tide. Who before them, so Tua and Jalen Hurts were drafted in 2020. Before them, who was the last Alabama QB to be taken in the draft? And then I'm going to give you a bonus point if you can name the round he was taken in.
Oh. I want to say, is it McCarron was the last one?
It is A.J. McCarron, Richmond. Good job.
I was between him and McElroy. I took a stab.
McElroy would have been another good guess. McElroy was the one before McCarron. But, okay, so it's A.J. McCarron for an extra point, Richmond, and to really start pulling away with this competition. Do you know what round A.J. McCarron was taken in?
I don't think he was a high round. I want to say 4.
So close. He was a 5th round pick.
Yeah.
You know
Okay.
what? That's okay, though. Good job on knowing it was A.J. McCarron. Richmond now leads 3-1 for each of Eric and Patrick. So y'all have some comebacks too. That is my only trivia question of the week as well. So that pretty much closes out our show. I want to thank everyone, especially if you're watching this. I want to thank you for tuning in to watch it. I want to thank Gridiron Ratings for helping us put this on, especially Jeff and Ronnie over there. We couldn't do this without them. Let's finish with some sign-offs. Eric, where can people find you going forward?
All right. I'm the Nighthawk PT. You can find me on Twitter at @FF_Nighthawk.
Patrick?
So finally put my Twitter handle up. I'll probably be working on cleaning that out a little bit. But you can find me on there. I'm going to have some time on my hands with this hurricane coming through. Got off work Friday, so I might be got some things to do Friday. Might clean that up for you guys. So check in next week. Not yet.
Matt, give him a day before posting this.
Yeah, give me a day.
Give him a few days, then go check his Twitter.
It may change.
Gotta make sure.
It may get
everything
deleted
is clean. Might have a new Twitter account
by next week.
Richmond.
So you can find me at RP Laterio DPT. And again, usually for me, it's a mix of physical therapy and track stuff on there, but go ahead and give me a follow. You might learn a few things about physical therapy or the track and field world.
Alrighty. And I'm Matt. I'm at Fantasy Ferret on Twitter. Thank you for tuning in if you did.